Okay, we're going to start Siman Shin Chaf Beis, Hilchos Hafrashas Challah. Let me read the first three dinim, and then we'll have some things to say about it. Okay, the first din is Mitzvah Aseh Lahafresh Truma Meha'isa V'Litnul Kain. It's Mitzvah Aseh to take Truma out of every batter, give it to a Kain Shenemar Reishis Arizosechem Tarimu Truma. From the first of your batters, you should give Truma. For Reishis Zeh, and this Reishis Ein Lo Shim in the Torah. Midoraisa, there's no amount that you have to give. And I feel with Hifresh Kisa'ira Potter Seis, even if you take the tiniest amount, like a piece of barley, it's like the smallest you can imagine, you pot it's good. But if you mafresh everything, I mean, there's no minimum, but there is a maximum. If you mafresh everything, it's not a good hafrasha. Actually, shari miktas until you leave over a certain amount. In Mitzvah Hashem, the Ramah is going to mention that again in Shin Chaf Gimel. We'll talk about it there. That this plot about that you have to leave over a certain amount. Okay, and we did research midrabanan. So midraisa you can give the tiniest amount. Midrabanan, mafrishin echad mechaftal min ha'isa. You're supposed to 1/24 of each batter. Vahanachtaim, and a baker ha'isa limka b'shuk who's selling to the public. Mafresh echad min memches. He has a lower share. He has to give only a 48th. I mean, half as much as a Baal Bayis. We'll learn more about that in the later halachas, not for today. The nitma ha'isa b'shagir b'ainis. If the isa became tummy, either by mistake or totally by ainis, so that means the kohen is not going to be able to eat it anyhow. So then, then the Chacham said, why bother make you be mafresh 1/24th? And it's all going to go be to the garbage. It all has to be burnt. So instead, even a Baal Bayis gets away with 1/24th. Okay, those shiurim, the 24th and the 48th, Mitzvah Hashem will be for next time. What that means. So that's going to be in the later halacha more clearly. Okay. So the first din said that you have to be mafresh challah. Okay, and you can give even a tiny amount. Halacha base. Ein chayav mechal min haTorah el be'Eretz Yisroel b'lvad. Really, the din is you only chayav midoraisa to be mafresh challah in Eretz Yisroel. Shenemar v'hoya ba'chocha milechem ha'aretz. It says in the Torah you should be mafresh it when you come to Eretz Yisroel. Meaning, even though you might think that it's a mitzvah tuli baritz, it's really not a mitzvah tuli baritz. It has nothing to do with the ground. We're going to find out in later halachas. It has nothing to do with the ground. It doesn't depend on being produce of Eretz Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. But the din is it's only chayiv in Eretz Yisrael for a different reason. Because it says it's only chayiv in Eretz Yisrael. It's not like Truma. Truma doesn't have a pasuk that's only in Eretz Yisrael. It's a mitzvah tuli baritz. Mitzvah tuli baritz is only in Eretz Yisrael. Challah is different than that. It's really not a mitzvah tuli baritz, but midoraisa only applies in Eretz Yisrael. And the second condition is the second condition is that it only applies when all the Yidden live in Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk, b'vayachem. It says when you'll come into Eretz Yisrael, and that means the Gemara Darshan is bias kulchem v'loy bias mitzaschem. You have to all come into Eretz Yisrael, and therefore lefika challah bezman hazeh challah nowadays, and that doesn't only mean nowadays in the days of Shulchan Aruch, and I feel b'mei Ezra. Even during times of the second base of Mikdash, when there were lots of Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, but all the Yidden weren't there, even they weren't there, Ein El Midraim, even in Eretz Yisrael, the mitzvah is only a drabanan, because Midraisa it's only when all the Yidden are there, and that didn't even happen during the second base of Mikdash, and therefore it's only a drabanan. And Halacha Gimel is, Afresh L'chal b'chutz la'aretz, midivrei Seifrim, midrabanan, we mafresh challah even in chutz la'aretz. I mean, even in Eretz Yisrael, it could be a deraisa. It's lamaisa today. It's a drabanan, but in chutz la'aretz, it's always a drabanan. Kedei shli tishtakach teres chalas Yisrael. So people shouldn't forget how to be mafresh challah. We'll hear more about that in the future. But there's in the next sermon really. But midrabanan, we have a mitzvah of Hafrashas Challah even in chutz la'aretz. And we'll talk about that in later Simon. We're going to talk about what's special about chutz la'aretz. Because it's a lower drabanan, some special kulas have to do them. Okay, so I just want to start by saying like this: the Mishnah says that mitzvah Hafrashas Challah is a mitzvah that's so connected to being in a Jewish house that it's one of the three mitzvahs that are specific to women. Okay, it's when the people who run the home have that specific mitzvah, and most people think of Hafrashas Challah like that. That's what we do. And of course, while we do these dinim, we're going to talk about being mafresh challah and all the parts of it that have to do with how you do it in your house also. Okay? But we look at things from a different angle. We think about it more from the commercial side of it. So we're going to put more emphasis or point out things that have to do with Hafrashas Challah in a local bakery, in a commercial bakery, we'll have more interest in that than dafka what goes on in a personal home. Okay, so in that vein of talking about what goes on in a commercial bakery, I wanted to introduce to you that there are 4 ways that people are Hafrashas Challah that I'm aware of in commercial bakery. What they deal with Hafrashas Challah in commercial bakeries. Okay, well, when I think commercial, I mean it's not in your house. I mean like a local bakery, a big, huge commercial bakery, like that kind of a bakery, or a bigger bakery that's making pitas or something like all kinds of things like that. Okay, so I came up with 4 different ways that they do. Okay, the first one is. I'm sorry. I have one more thing to tell you before I get to these 4 ways. I'm sorry. Okay, we're gonna keep using the word challah, okay, which is what most people call this mitzvah. Most people in Mamish in today's day and age, when they think of the word challah, they think of the bread you eat on Shabbos. Okay, they think that's what they call it. They think of that as challah, and we're going to find out, surprisingly, in Siman Shin Chav Ches. It's going to be a whole shaila exactly what the word challah really means. Okay, and it has a nafkamina l'maisa what the word challah means. We're going to say I was going to talk about it today, but I realized I was going to save it to Shin Chav Ches. Okay, we're going to talk about it there. What did the word really mean? Okay, nowadays we for sure don't mean that. Nowadays people think it's the braided bread that you eat on Shabbos, and that's not what we're talking about. Okay, we're going to use it. We'll talk about it when we get to Shin Chav Ches.
He said the whole bracha of Hafrashas Challah he said is strange.
We're going to see that's in Shin Chav Ches. Shin Chav Ches is what the bracha is. That's why we're going to talk about it. We get to Shin Chav Ches, talks about what the bracha is. Okay, so we're going to talk about it. Just be patient.
But it doesn't say anything.
I'm just saying it to tell you that I'm going to use the word challah the way in these. It's called hilchos challah. It says on top of the page hilchos challah. That's how we're going to use it. These halachos have to do with hilchos challah, even though that word may not be perfectly accurate. Okay, we'll see. We'll get to Shin Chav Ches. Okay, so back where we were. So there's 4 ways that people are Hafrashas Challah. Okay, the first one is the traditional way. Okay, there's someone who's Shomer Shabbos, who's there in the bakery, and every time they make a batter of dough, he pulls out a piece, and he's Hafrashas Challah. Okay, like you do it in your house. Okay, every time they make a dough, there's someone there who takes care of it. He pulls a piece over, and he's Hafrashas Challah. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. That's like doing it in your house. Okay. The next is what I call the dough ball method. Okay, and that is that in the middle of the night, there's no one Shomer Shabbos there. The baker.
If he's pulling dough multiple times during the day, does it make a bracha each time, or just?
We'll get to that. Not for now. I'm just talking about how they do it.
It's awesome.
Yes, probably I don't know. Okay, the next is in the middle. Most bakers like as in like a retail bakery, like North Shore Bakery. I can't say Tevel. North Shore Bakery. They work. North Shore Bakery works during the night. That's what they do. They do their preparation during the night. In most of these places, there's no Shomer Shabbos there during the night. So what they do is the people who are working there during the night, every time they make a batter of dough, they take off a piece and they put it on the side for the rabbi. Okay, they put a seat. So if overnight they make 14 batters, in the morning when the rabbi or the Shomer Shabbos comes, there are 14 balls of dough that they made during the night, and they do the hafrasha using those 14 balls of dough. Okay? In the morning. When
it wakes up.
I'm not talking about what it is. I'm just telling you how it's done. Each one of these we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about it. Each one in the right time. We're going to talk about it. I'm just telling you the 4 different ways that it's happening. Okay, I'm just trying to. I'll tell you in a second when I tell you these. Okay, 4 things. The third one is, which many of you are aware of. These first 2 that I told you are more commonly done in like a retail bakery, like North Shore Bakery. Okay, that style of bakery. Okay, the third one is to use Tevel. What do I mean that they use Tevel? Someone takes either matzah or batter. They make a thing that's chayiv in Hafrashas Challah, enough dough that's chayiv in Hafrashas Challah, and they're not Hafrashas Challah from it. They leave it as Tevel. And what do they do with it? Then they leave that Tevel in the bakery where they need to do Hafrashas Challah. There's a bakery located 500 miles away from any from person. They leave this Tevel sitting there, and then every day somebody remotely is Hafrashas Challah. He says, you know that batter that I left there in the freezer, or the matzah that's sitting there on the counter? Today, for every batter that they make, I want another little piece to be challah for that batter that was made. So today they made 26 batters. I have 26 little pieces from that tevel are now challah for the 26 batters that I made on that day. Okay, it's done
in the future.
We'll talk about that also when it goes to the past future. Okay, we talk about that when they're getting into details. The point is that it's done remotely, done by somebody who doesn't really have a connection to what's going on, but he has the tevel sitting there. He has his tevel sitting there, waiting to do hafrasha when when it's supposed to happen. He does it remotely. He wakes up in the morning, he babbles through some nusach that he's supposed to say, and then he did the hafrasha. Okay? Yes, that's the third way. And the fourth way is that there are some places, what they do is, in order to deal with the halachas of Hafrashas Challah, they make it that the only person who's chayav challah is if a yid owns the batter when it's turned into a batter. They sell the batter, they sell the flour before it's made into a batter. So at the time when it's chayav in Hafrashas Challah, it's not owned by a yid, and therefore there's no chayav Hafrashas Challah. Hafrashas Challah depends on who owned it at the time when you mix the flour and the water together. At that point, when they mix the flour and water, it was owned by a guy. No chayav Hafrashas Challah. So they haven't really been mafresh Challah, but they avoided the chayav Hafrashas Challah because it wasn't owned by a yid. They got around the din. Okay.
Only three ways.
So there are four ways of dealing with Hafrashas Challah. Just like there are practices that say we follow Hafrashas Challah. There's a company that has a very traditional history of being owned by Jews. Okay, but it's owned by Goyim now. So on the box it says, we follow the halachas of Challah. Because they're not mafresh Challah anymore. Because they're owned by Goyim. But it sounds Jewish to say we follow the halachas of Challah. We don't say Hafrashas Challah Kedin anymore because it's still, they're not mafresh Challah. Yeah, that's what we deal with Hafrashas Challah in these four ways. Okay, so now of these four ways, the one about how you do it in the traditional way, of course we're going to talk about, it's going to come up in different ways. About this thing about dough balls, or Mirta Shembi and Simon Shin Chav Gimel, that's the main place we're going to talk about it. This thing about Tevel is going to be all over the place. Okay, it's come out every single simon. There are going to be parts of that idea to use Tevel is going to come up like all over the place. It's going to keep cropping up of shilas that there are or issues that there are with how to deal about that Tevel, and then the eitzah of selling it to a guy is going to be at the way and Shin Lamed, if I got it right, is going to be that dinim about if it's right and how to deal with that selling it to a guy. Okay, so I just want to tell you these four ways to do it because they're going to keep coming up. In particular, this idea to use Tevel, to have Tevel sitting there, it's a modern creation that people do that and that we do it the way we do it, and that's going to keep coming up. It's got lots of issues to it. Okay. Now let's go on to something more, something else. Okay, the Shulchan says the very first words are Mitzvah lahafresh truma me'isa v'litna l'kayin. So the mitzvah say to do these things. The Shulchan was copying the Rambam, who says that there's one mitzvah of being Hafrashas Challah, and the mitzvah is to be mafresh Challah and give it to the Kohen. Okay, that whole as a unit is one mitzvah. Okay, the Ramban in Sefer Mitzvah says no, that's not one mitzvah. He says that's two different mitzvahs. There's one mitzvah to be mafresh Challah, and there's one mitzvah to give it to the Kohen. Because it's just two different things. And the Ramban has a few rayas. Okay, three of the rayas I'll tell you. Two, which are three, are the rayas like this. He says, first of all, we make a bracha on Hafrashas Challah. Okay? Well, the rule is you only make a bracha if you're going to be doing a complete mitzvah. So if the mitzvah is to do the hafrasha and give it to the kohen, and the end of the mitzvah is and give it to the kohen, that's the end. Since you're not holding by giving it to the kohen now, you shouldn't make the bracha at that point. You would only make the bracha when you're ready to finish the mitzvah. Okay, and the fact that we make the bracha at the beginning, which is Tisefta. Okay, it's a Tisefta that says that. So that we do it even at the beginning, tells us that there's a mitzvah even to do the hafrasha. Second, which is two versions of it, which is a person is mafresh challah even if he's not going to be giving it to a kohen. Like let's say the stuff is already tummy, so you're not going to give it to a kohen. Or let's say the person himself is a kohen. Okay, he's not going to give it to anybody. Even so, the person is mechuyev to mafresh challah. So you see that it's not one more mitzvah which is be mafresh challah and give it to a kohen, because even when there's no and give it to a kohen, you still have a mitzvah to do it anyhow. And those are based on Gemaras.
Kohen always has to be mafresh.
But it has to be mafresh challah.
Always the case.
That's the din. Yes, it's a free. Based on the positive. Even a kohen has to be mafresh. So why would a kohen? If the din is, if the mitzvah is be mafresh and give it to a kohen, and I'm never going to do the end part of it. I don't do that end part of it. So the fact that you have to be mafresh anyhow tells us that the hafrasha itself is a mitzvah.
You know what I'm saying about other matters also that the mitzvah includes the giving to the kohen?
That's a same question. Same shaila about that.
Well,
same.
don't machloek is only by Tumah and Challah.
By Tumah Challah.
So then the Chaim okay with it.
Okay, now.
But then by Tumah you don't give it to the Kohen.
Not that you don't give it to him, but your lamaisa not going to give it to the kohen. Because he could burn it and have enough from it. Okay, so I guess you could answer that. For that one case, you could say you're going to lamaisa give it to the kohen. Anyhow, Norman says, you're not going to give the lamaisa, you're not give it to the kohen. You're just going to burn it. Okay, like we talked about, we're going to come in later dinner, you just burn it. You burn it. So you're never going to do the actual nesina to a kohen. So then it must not be part of the mitzvah. It must be that the mitzvah is even without that. Okay, so there's a few answers given, a few ways to explain what the Rambam means. Rabbi Cement brings that from the Sefer Kinnis Sefer, it's in Sefer Mitzvahs, who says that it says in the pasuk, the pasuk says Titnu LaHashem Truma. Okay, when it says describing challah, you should give it to Hashem. So the way they understand it is like this: the mitzvah of Hafrashas Challah is for a person to take this piece off, and it's sort of instant. When he takes it off, he's giving it to Hashem. That's what his mitzvah is, to give it to the Baruch Shalom. Now, L'maisa is the Baruch Shalom designates that the kohen is Mishulchan Gavoy Kazachi. The kohanim are the ones who are supposed to eat that food that belongs to the Baruch Shalom. So now I'm a shomer on someone's food. I separated the food and gave it to the Baruch Shalom. That's the mitzvah. Okay. Now, once I got the food, so really the mitzvah really should read is Mitzvah L'Hafresh Truma Me'isa V'Litna L'Hashem. But I don't really give it to Hashem. Hashem says to me, what you should do is, the guy who's allowed to eat it is a kohen, and therefore what I'm supposed to, so as a shomer, I happen to be that I have the kohen stuff, so I find the kohen and I hand it to him. In fact, the din is, if it's very hard to give it to the kohen, you're not mechayiv to. Okay, you just keep it. Okay, but the little kohen is, to give it to the kohen is not that the mitzvah is, that's part of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is only to do the hafrasha, and the hafrasha is to give it to the Baruch Shalom. In Mamela, it works out that you give it to a kohen also. Okay, so if you would read it, it reads well into the Rambam and into the Yad HaChazaka, where he says, Mitzvah say laharfish truma min hakohen min ha'isa l'kohen. Okay, you're marfish it l'kohen, meaning it's for Hashem, and the person.
It's not Mammon Gavoya.
That's what he learns. That it's like Mammon Gavoya.
It's like Mishulchan Gavoya.
It's you're supposed to hand it off to the Baruch Shalom. What's Hashem going to do with it? So that's what he says. That's what Kinnis Sefer says. That, no, it's not true. You think of it like that. You think that it's like Meister that belongs to. You give it to the Levi, and it's like his thing. It's like private property. He says no, that's not what Pshat is. That Pshat is that it's really Kachim. Here's Meister. I'm not giving you a right. I don't remember. I don't know. You probably can. But I don't know. Okay, I think you can also. Okay, I don't know. So this is one child he wants to say is that really, basically, according to this, everyone's going to be agreeing that the mitzvah is just to do the hafrasha. Okay, and according to this, even Rambam is going to agree the mitzvah is to give to the kohen. The mitzvah is just to do the hafrasha. In the Sefer HaMitzvahs is not so great. The Sefer HaMitzvahs is like what says in Shulchan Aruch, that the mitzvah is lahavrit v'litna l'kohen. Why tell me v'litna l'kohen? V'litna l'kohen is a little too much. That extra v'litna. Because that's not really the mitzvah. The mitzvah is lahafresh truma me'isa. Or you say like this Rambam says it, lahafresh me'isa l'kohen, like sort of with that, heading in that direction. But the giving it to the kohen is almost a technicality. It's a choshen mishpatin. I have the guy's stuff, I might as well hand it to him. Okay, so that doesn't read as great. Okay. There's another shiloh that's related to this, sort of related to this, also from Rabbi Simon, and that is like this. What happens, are you mechuyev to do hafrashas trumas, to hafrashas challah, if you're not planning on eating this batter? I made dough, and I'm not going to be eating it. I'm no interest in eating this thing. Is there a mitzvah be'etzem to be marfresh? That's my mitzvah to be marfresh, the challah? But you know, there's no mitzvah to be marfresh challah. If you want to eat it, you need, in order to be matzah your food, to make it not tevel, you need to be marfresh it. But if you don't want to eat it, so don't be marfresh it. Okay? So, it's a machlokes. The Taz, in Siman Aleph of Yeridea, the Taz says that it's a completely independent mitzvah. The mitzvah has nothing to do, even if you're not planning on eating it, you're to do the hafrasha. It makes no difference if you're going to eat it or you're not going to eat it. You have the mitzvah hafrasha. It's like putting on tefillin in the morning. What is it? Put on tefillin in the morning. You're to put on tefillin. What is it? Doesn't depend on. It's not like if you want to go to work, you have to put on tefillin. You have to put on tefillin every day. Doesn't make a difference. So you made a batter, you have to be marfresh challah. That's what the Taz says. And there's a Pesach Tshuva in Siman Shin Chav Ches, a little bit about that. It's not exactly the right case. He says is what happens if a person made a batter of dough and he realized afterwards that it's full of bugs. So he's not going to eat it anyhow. Okay, the guy's not going to eat it. He talks about whether the guy's mechuyev to be marfresh challah. Okay, it's not exactly the same time. Okay, so this ties is along the lines of what we were saying before, that there might be a chiv hafrasha even if it's not going to eat. Well, not if it's not going to the kohen, but the mitzvah hafrasha is an independent mitzvah. And Rabbi Kveiger over there in Yeridea says, I don't know. He says, I don't know who told you that such a thing. He says, it's just to be matzah the tevel. If you want to eat it, you have to do this in order to eat it. If you don't want to eat it, just don't be marfresh it. Who cares? And he says, if you look in Aruch, at the beginning of Aruch, not Simnal, but Sil Ches, at the beginning of Chaim, the Magen Avram says that. He says, Hafrashas Challah is like Shechita. You want to eat an animal, you have to shecht it. You don't have a mitzvah to go shecht animals. You don't just go walk around all just shechting animals because it's not a mitzvah to shecht an animal. If you're hungry, then you shecht the animal. If you don't want to eat the meat, you don't have to shecht it. And the Magen Avram says the same thing for Hafrashas Challah. If you want to eat the batter, you have to be Hafrashas Challah. You don't want to eat the batter, don't be Hafrashas Challah. Okay? Now, what I just said to you is, Rav Kvega says that, that's how he understands the Magen Avram. I'm going to tell you in a second to grow like that also. Pri Megadim does not understand the Magen Avram like that. Okay, if you look at the Pri Megadim, over there in Aruch Chaim, does not understand that the Magen Avram is saying that. He's not talking about the Shiloh. Pri Megadim understands that the Magen Avram is really talking about whether you have to stand up for the mitzvah. Okay, and he just says the way the Pri Megadim learns, it's just a little more like this. It's not. It's a different shot. But we'll continue like this. The Gra says on the Magen Avram, he says, really? He says, it's not a mitzvah to do it, to be mafresh it. He says, I don't understand. He says, the Yerushalmi says, it's actually going to be a thing later on. The Yerushalmi says that if a person is not allowed to make a batter that's less than a shir challah in order to get out of the mitzvah. There's a certain amount that you have to make a batter to be chayiv and challah. You can't purposely make a batter that's too small to get away from the mitzvah. He says, why not? Why shouldn't I get away from the mitzvah? Who cares? If the mitzvah is just when it's Tevel you want to eat, you have to do it. There's no mitzvah of Hafrashah. It's just like a way to be matzah yourself. So why not? Why shouldn't I make a batter that's less than the amount and not be mechuyev? What's the problem with it? Okay, so he's understanding it. He's understanding Yerushalmi to be a din rather than like a hashkafa point of don't avoid mitzvahs. He says if it wouldn't be a mitzvah, there would be no problem making a batter that's warm there. So the Gra thinks that the Taz, I don't remember if he calls it the Taz, but he thinks what the Taz says is more correct, that being mafresh challah be'etzem is a mitzvah for the person to be mafresh challah. It has nothing to do with whether you want to eat it or not. Some it's a mitzvah mafresh challah. Okay, I'll throw into here just as an aside. It's sort of an aside. Rabbi Sement wants to say something else. He's not saying this and this. He's saying this in Rashi that Kenzain for challah there's a mitzvah and for truma there's not a mitzvah. That shot that he wants to say, maybe for truma you're not mechuyev to mafresh unless you want to eat it, and challah you are. It's that thing that I just said to you is not like this Taz or the Magen Avram or a Kvega. Okay, so it's not like any of these people. Anyhow, that's what, if you want to look at it. Okay, one last angle of this same Shiloh, of this part of an issue is, there's no Yehuda, and the Yehuda says, he says, I want to tell you, a davar chadash, like had muni b'zed shum mafarish b'paisik. I want to tell you something that no one ever thought of before now. Okay, so already that makes you a little, nervous, as he understands that. He said, I'm going to tell you something that no one ever told you beforehand. In fact, we're going to see the Aruch who say like him, but he says that no one ever said this before me. This is news, okay? And that is like this. When we read the Shulchan Aruch, I told you that the Shulchan Aruch says the din is you can be mavrish even the tiniest amount. Mid the rights you can give even the tiniest amount. And then he says, no. He says, there are really two mitzvahs. Remember I told you before, there's maybe two mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah of Hafrashas Challah, and the mitzvah of giving that piece to the kohen. There's two different mitzvahs. The mitzvah of Hafrashas Challah, no matter what, even a tiny amount works. Doesn't make a difference. Midrash and Midrabanan, doesn't make a difference. It's all always a Kisari works it. For the second mitzvah, giving to the kohen, that's when Midrash there's a certain shear. He's not sure what the shear is. There's a shear. It's if you have to get tikkun, you have to give it to the kohen. You have to give him something that's royal in the Sina. I think it's a Sefri he brings it from. That you have to give something that's royal for the Sina. That amount is a certain share Midrash. And Midrabanan has a share of a 24th or 48th or whatever the share is. He says, but even Midrabanan, there's no share to be matzah the Tevel. To be matzah from the first thing, which is to be mafresh matzah from Tevel, there's no share for that. Midrabanan, the Drabanan only goes on the second if you're giving to the kohen. Okay, and Ken Zayin, that's going to be a hezber in a Ramah we're going to see later on, maybe. The Maisa is, Chaim Kanievsky brings it and he says, there are Taka Rishonim who say like this, but come on, everybody disagrees, and everybody says that the din deraisa is, you're yotze everything with a mashahu, even with a sa'ira. Even the nesina to the kohen, you're yotze with a deraisa like that, and that at the Rabbanan, you're going to do both halves, there's a certain shit that you have to give. Okay? But this, that the Yehuda wants to say, that midoraisa, the nesina has to have a certain amount to it. He says, come on, nobody holds it down. Okay. The last thing I want to tell you is the Halacha Bey said that in Eretz Yisroel, even B'mei Ezra, they weren't chayiv in Hafrashas Challah because they didn't have. Midrash, they were not chayiv because the pasuk says, "B'vayachem the bias kulchem," that all you didn't have to come. Now, you probably would have guessed that Kulchem doesn't mean every single person. It means his roiv of the Yidden have to be in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? Kulchem, the word kol doesn't mean every single person. Doesn't mean if there's one guy on vacation, we're not mechayim chal. It means as if roiv of the people are there. Okay? Another part of that is that if you remember when we learned in Hafrashas Challah, when we learned that, this is the same. We're connecting, from the last thing to this one. We learned over there in Hafrashas Challah that in order for Shemitah to be noig, not only do you need to have everyone in Eretz Yisrael, but you may need to have everyone should be makris mekayimai. Each of the shvatim and each of the even maybe smaller than shvatim have to know where their places in Eretz Yisrael. That's a din for Shemitah. For Challah, it's enough just to have most of the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. They don't have to be makris mekayimai. So the question is like this: if you look at the statistics, okay, where for the first time in probably thousands of years, we're holding by the point that it's almost roiv Yidden living in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, according to the statistics, the way they read it now, the statistics that people give is Aruch, the places I looked at, 40% of the Yidden live in Eretz Yisrael. But those statistics themselves are a little questionable.
From England?
No, Jews. Most Jews live in Eretz Yisrael, and those statistics are a little questionable because they count Jews very broadly. They have a very broad interpretation of what it means to be someone who calls themselves Jewish, and that is to say, in Eretz Yisrael, most of the people who call themselves Jewish are Jewish. In Chutz Aretz, there are lots of people who call themselves, who would be, according to these statistics, would be considered Jewish, who the din would not be considered Jewish. So 40% may be way more than 40%, may even already be past right. But even according to their statistics, soon enough it's going to be right. You can keep moving to Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem. So soon enough it's going to be right, even according to that. It may already be right. Okay, it may really be right because again, not everybody who's counted Jewish by these, numbers. So the shayla is when that happens, or if that already happened. We don't know how to count that, but if and when that happens, does it then going to change? B'mi Ezra, it was a drabanan. Is it going to be that now in Eretz Yisrael, at some point, one day, the way they like to say this, one day, the plane's going to land and the new Oleh is going to step in, and all of a sudden will it then come to Raisa? The guy who tips the scale, and of course he won't know who he is.
Then somebody has twins of this one.
That's right. So some Yidden is going to step off the plane from wherever, and all of a sudden is the mitzvah going to come to Raisa?
If the rice is there, does that mean that there's no minimum shear anymore?
No. The rice of the din is you can give even the tiniest amount.
And make a bracha to make a bracha.
Oh, you mean a share of how much batter you have to have? Yeah. No, that's a din deraisa. There has to be a certain size to the batter.
Oh.
You have to have a certain size to the batter. So Chaim Kanievsky means that there are taka people who hold like that. The taka when it comes to the point that there'll be roiv yidden Eretz Yisrael, but it won't be true. It says over here, it's only when there's not roiv, when the day will come that there will be roiv yidden in Eretz Yisrael, that'll be. Then it'll become a din deraisa. Okay, what are they saying? I need to put a little words into what I just said, which is like this. The way the Gemara would say this is, when the Yidden first came to Eretz Yisrael, when Yehoshua was Mekadosh the land, that Kedusha was Kedusha, Rishon Kitchel, Shaita, V'loi Kitchel, that Kedusha is temporary, so to speak. And once the Yidden left, the Kedusha was off. Kedusha of Ezra, the Kedusha Shnia was Kitchel, Shaita, Ula, it's for good. And therefore the Eretz has Kedusha to it. So therefore, when we get to the Tanai of B.S. Kulchem, when everyone's there, then everyone's there.
Why is Truma? Truma not the rice.
That's what the Gemara says, right?
So why is Truma not the rice?
So it's a good question. It's actually a Gemara. The Gemara says very interesting. The Gemara says, even if you hold that Truma is Daraisa, am I getting this right? The Gemara says, even if, I don't know how the Gemara says, even if Challah Bismana says Daraisa, Truma Bismana says the Drabanan. And then the Gemara says, no, you got it backwards. It's the other way around. Even if Truma Bismana says the Daraisa, Challah is a Drabanan. Okay, that's the maskana of the Gemara is that Challah is a Drabanan because most Yidden don't live in Eretz Yisrael. But Truma Kenzai is a Daraisa. It's a Shaila. They're not dependent on each other. Okay, it's two different Tanaim to make them Daraisa Drabanan.
Does handling the Challah change when it becomes the rice?
Will it didn't become more difficult or more serious?
More backward than
maybe
instead of letting it, burning it, or
I don't know.
wrapping it.
I don't know.
They're still going to give it to Yiddish Kayin.
I don't know.
Give it back or whatever.
I don't know. So speakers are also.
It'll be more serious as how we treat it, but will we actually do something practical? I don't know. Okay, so, but the he brings also that there are two persons who thought not like this. Who said come out the same thing. It come out the same thing. And the first one who said it was a person saying it not when they were Yidden. You know, Yidden living there, Chaim, salvation, who says like this. He says, there's two Tanoim for Challah to be Mechuyev Challah Midaraisa in Eretz Yisrael. The first is, you need to have Kedushas Aretz. So, like, for example, I just told you that Kedusha Rishona was Kitchel L'Shaita, one Kitchel L'Shaita. So once the Yidden were thrown out at the first Churban, you were missing the first tonight. It wasn't Kedusha Sa'aretz anymore. So you couldn't be Chayv and Challah D'Oraisa. There's a second tonight, which is most of the Yidden have to be in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? So that's the second tonight. So the way everyone is approaching until I said this Shita is, the Kedusha is here. Kedusha Shni is Kitchel L'Shaita, Vid Kitchel L'Shaita. It's a permanent Kedusha. It stays forever. And now we just need the second time, which is most people to be there. Reb Chaim says no. He says, when Ezra came to Eretz Yisrael, he was not able to make the proper Kedusha to Eretz Yisrael because part of making the Kedusha is you have to have most of the people there. In other words, it's not that the two Tzorim are completely independent of each other. It's not just that you have to have Kedusha Sa'aretz and you have to have most people. Having most people is from a different pasuk. I'm not telling you, it's a different pasuk. That the Kedusha for Challah needs most people to be there when you make the Kedusha also. So when Ezra was Makadosh Eretz Yisrael in many ways, the Kedusha for Challah he wasn't able to do. He wasn't for Challah, for other things he could. But for Challah he was not able to make the proper Kedusha because Lamaisa he didn't have Roy Yisrael. And therefore, the fact that we get Roy Yisrael later on won't help. It would help theoretically. If we had the right people, we had a Melech, Vanavi, whatever we need to do to be Mekadosh, we could be Mekadosh ourselves. But the Kedusha from Ezra didn't take hold. Ezra made Kedusha for other things. But when in Challah, Ezra was not able to be Mekadosh. And therefore, the fact that we get most people won't help us. We'll have the second tonight, but we're missing the Kedusha Le'inyan Challah. Okay, that's how he says it. He says it's Medurik. I mean, in a million years, I would have never thought this. But in Medurik, in the Rambam, in the end of the Hilchos Shemitah of Yisroel, toward the end, another continuation of our scene, who says, he says, V'chein lasad lavoi, the bia shlishis, the Eishi Konsul Aretz, when Yidden come back to Eretz Yisrael by the third base of Mikdash, Yaschilu Limnos Shmita V'Yovelos, they'll start counting against Shmita and Yovel, because then you'll have met the time that you have to do. V'Yikadshu Bati Arichayma, and they'll be Makadosh Bati Arichayma. He says, why are they going to be Makadosh Bati Arichayma? He should have said, like, V'Yiskadshu Bati Arichayma. The Bati Arichayma will now have their Kedusha to them. If you just need everyone to be there, so as soon as the conditions happen, the Bati Arichayma will have their Kedusha to them. Why do they say they'll make a Kedusha? They'll be Makadosh to Bati Arichayma. Why do they do that? They already did that. Ezra did that already. So to which he says is that it's because certain Kedushas were not able to take effect because Lamaisa they didn't have the right to learn to make those Kedushas take effect, and therefore they couldn't do it. The Chazon Ish says something very similar. The Chazon Ish was, of course, living in a time when it was much more Lamaisa, that you could already see it coming in the horizon that made it be right. The Chazon Ish says basically like this, he's not sure about it. He's not sure 100% if it's true, and he considers that Kenzain, Ezra's Kedusha was set into motion, was that when most Yidden are there, that'll be good enough. So he leaves it off as a